I always like to start with a Bible quote. So here's a short one. Pure love arises in the heart of the aspirant in response of the grace from the Master. So as Terry said, for me and my connection and relationship with Baba is an inner relationship. I met Baba and had the good fortune to be in his physical presence so many times. It seemed like that's the way life was always going to be, but that did change. But then in hindsight I realized that Baba was always with me, even when I didn't know he was with me. And he was always working on the inner relationship with me. And that his embrace has always been with me, and that is his grace. And I think that all of you will someday, if you don't know it now, you will, that his embrace, because of his grace, is always with you. And I did have the good fortune to be born into the family of Whcn and Darwin Shaw with my brother Lowell and my sister Renee. I was the middle child. And my parents had met Baba in 1934. So, of course, they had told us about Baba. And their influence was there. It wasn't so much what they said. They never sat us children down and said, now this is what it's all about. It was more or less their relationship with Baba that influenced us. The unspoken words and their love. It comes across between all the lines. It was Baba's pictures that influenced me. And through the years, Baba gave orders. Unspoken words and their love. It comes across between all the lines. It was Baba's pictures that influenced me, and through the years Baba gave orders, to various kinds of orders to my parents, and it was such a joy for them to participate in these orders. And that, I don't know how it affected my brother and sister, and of course Adele had orders and we all had orders through the years. Yes, that was saved just for you. And so it wasn't until not many years ago I was reflecting on my earlier life and the orders that my father had in the early 40s. Many others had those similar orders. He had a list of things. And then I realized that I was a part of that. And it didn't dawn on me until not long ago that I was a part of his orders. And because one of the orders was not to touch a female age 7 or above. And I was 7 years old. And I forget, I'd have to ask him how long a period of time that extended, and it was not a short time. And for us, in our family, we children would just pounce on our father and play all over him. And so there was a very physical, loving relationship. So all I remember is that it was a joy for me to assist him in obeying, that I could be a part of what was happening. And so, of course, I had to refrain from going in and playing with him physically. And I really I don't have a memory of feeling deprived or feeling that I had to restrain myself. I just felt that it was a joy to have the opportunity to be a part of this. And, that just kind of faded into my childhood life, and it wasn't until I was an adult that I was back in touch with that. But that shows you how a parent's and other people's example influences others. And of course Baba's embrace and his eye was upon me, and he created this opportunity for me, and he created in me the ability to feel that way and to cooperate. Now, another significant thing happened in my childhood that bears a lot to do with my relationship with Baba. I haven't told this story in public before, and many of the people who have known me, like Adele, since my childhood. I knew that since early life I had an eye condition, which was called crossed eyes. I had to turn one eye or the other eye in order to be able to see clearly. And I went through all my childhood for years and years in this condition. And frustrating, humiliating, taxing, trying, the whole ball game. It was a very difficult, trying situation. Talking about things to overcome and trying situations in life. I cut my eye teeth on them. I started my life that way, with adversity, being sort of outcast socially because of it, many other things. And so I learned that it was up to me to be happy, that I couldn't depend on other people to try to make me happy, and I couldn't let my condition destroy my happiness, and I had to make the best of it. And my parents were not able to afford any kind of surgery or treatment, which I knew, and I took that gracefully. So I just lived with it. But in my heart of hearts, I always knew that Baba would help me. And this was the beginning of faith and trust in Baba. Little did I know that I was doing it. I was doing it before I could be conscious that these were the words you put on that kind of activity, that it was faith and trust in Baba at all odds, in patience, because I was not given the answer for many, many years. As you can see, I was given an answer eventually. So along in my, when I had met Narina, she had suggested that I do the Bates method of eye exercises, which I did faithfully. And then when I was in high school, of course earlier in our lives, Baba wrote letters to my brother and sister and me, very sweet letters, encouraging us and saying, you will see Baba soon, because for us, we'd always say to our parents, when are we going to see Baba and when are we going to meet Baba? And this was in the mid-40s we received these letters, and it wasn't until 52, so it was still a long ways away. And we always wondered what it was like to meet Baba. And so then in my teens, Narina suggested that I continue with Bates methods, and I did those. And then Baba wrote to me when I was in high school. And in the letter he asked what I was doing, what I was studying, and things like that. And I wrote back saying what I was studying and so on, and what I liked, and that I was doing the eye exercises. And he wrote back, and he said, continue such and such studies, and he said, continue the eye exercises. And even after I started working at my job, I took time off to study the eye exercises, and that was really important because I learned fusion mentally. Even though I couldn't put my eyes together, I learned mentally what fusion was, and Baba knew that, so he was preparing the way. So I was still being very patient about the whole processing. And of course, here finally, 1952 comes along, and here we have the word that Baba's coming. And we were so excited to meet Baba. Do you think that I asked Baba about my eyes when I met Baba? No. It never occurred to me. In 52, it just never crossed my mind. It was no longer a priority in my life. It just faded in the background, and Baba never said a word. So we'll go and cover it. Eventually, things happen, and so I'll keep that thread of that story along with the other stories. Now, when Baba came to the United States in 1952, he stayed at the center at Myrtle Beach in South Carolina. And most people were not staying at the center, though there are some exceptions like Adele and Phyllis. The rest of us stayed in town at this hotel, and we had appointments to go to the center and see Baba. And it was just terribly suspenseful.
What month was that?
May. And our appointment for our family was May 10th, which was Mother's Day, and it was my mother's best Mother's Day to have her children finally meet Baba. We were in our late teens in 1952. So we drove to the center and waited for our appointment in the lagoon cabin where Baba was receiving people. And all the while, I felt somewhat intimidated by my parents' love for Baba. And I thought, I don't love Baba like they do. Maybe I'll be a stone, maybe I won't feel his love. And all these negative thoughts came up and all that. And so we sat on this bench and the lakeside of the lagoon cabin, and the door opened. And naturally I would be first in line, but I hung back to let my mother go first. Not because I was doing the right thing, it was because I was scared. And then Baba stood and embraced her, and then he stood to embrace all of us, and then he embraced me. And this embrace, is just so whole, he's so embracing, that there's just absolutely nothing in the way between you and Baba. There's no thought, there's no fear, there's just nothing. You melt in Baba's arms, and I felt, oh, at last I've come home, my real home, and that's my spiritual home, who I really am and where I really belong, is with Baba. And that brief moment is timeless. Every moment with Baba is completely timeless. We were talking about time earlier. I think Baba wants us to experience timelessness all the time. and every moment we're with Baba is timeless. It is an eternity. It's very hard. Your mind can't understand it. And it's just a precious moment where we belong. We all belong in Baba's embrace. That is our real home. And so one by one, each of us were embraced by Baba. We sat down, and right away Baba answered the fear I had had. He said, Renee, my sister, Renee and Leatrice haven't met me before. And then he said, they love me. And so right away he's telling me, affirming that I did love him. How do you know if you love him? But during that meeting, I did find out. I knew how to find out. I knew I loved him. Baba was just so absolutely sweet, and his presence filled the room. In one sense, he's a physical body sitting there, and in another sense, you're just completely unprepared to evaluate. And of course we were not evaluating what was happening at the moment. It was far beyond any kind of evaluation. His presence filled the room with light and with beauty. And soon we were so enveloped in it, and it was so natural. Our natural state of being. I found that Baba introduced me to the core of me. Who is that person? What is it? That core. And it's that core that loves Baba. And I also know from the several meetings of Baba, at one point I saw that Baba loves us through and through. He sees through you, he knows your past history, he sees everything. When he looks at you, when he looked at me, I felt he could see everything. And there's nothing to fear about what he sees. That we are completely and totally acceptable. And even our ability to accept love, and some of us have that difficulty. His acceptance is so total and so whole that we ourselves are enabled to accept that love completely, without any barriers. And this is what Baba's embrace is like. Yes, physically, what is it? Here's a physical form. And it feels like, almost like air, and it's so sweet. and yet it's solid. But it does not feel like an ordinary person. It just does not. You cannot describe it. It defies description. It's so extremely beautiful. Baba said many things to us, and he did keep the conversation simple because I think our minds were not able to cope with any. He didn't need to go into anything deep intellectually because he touched us at the heart. He touched us at a soul level. And a deep, deep, satisfying soul level. What everybody wants, and this is what he has for everyone. Just as I've now realized I was in his embrace as a child, I can compare that to the embrace of his love. I know that you are all always in his embrace. And it's just up to us to say, yes, we can accept that embrace. It's perpetual, and it is in that timelessness. It is always there. And of course, some of you already know this story, but bear with me. Baba talked with us, and my sister and I were taking shorthand notes. And this was extremely difficult because our minds were just disengaged. And to keep our minds focused on this is just like, where does that work? Trying to get that down. But it turned out it was important for our sakes, for our own history. And he said to my sister and me, just casually and innocently, would you jump in the would you do anything I ask you to do? He says, like a child, would you do anything? Well, that's planning your life away, and he doesn't give you 5 minutes or a day or anything. And you see, I had read Purdam's book, Perfect Master, when I was around 14, and I knew how difficult it could be to follow Baba's instructions. And I wanted to be one of those persons who could follow Baba's instructions, even the difficult ones. So when Baba asked that, I knew my answer was yes, come what may. But in the back of my mind, I was thinking, well, later I can think how hard it could be. And not that would deter me. And my sister was so overwhelmed at the heart level that her mind just needed a repeat of the question. Baba said, is that yes or just yes? And so we said, yes, really yes, Baba. And then he goes the next step. He said, would you jump in the lake? Well, here again, that's not hard, because I can swim. And we said, yes, Baba. And he said, with the alligators? and of course, being in the age of the Tarzan movies, I'm thinking the worst scenario is that I die in the jaws of the alligator. And this is the quality of Allah's love, that you know you could face that. It isn't a mental thing, it's that you're already His, and His will is the only thing. So if that is His will, that was it. That's exactly how I felt. And then Baba said, I am in the alligator, I am in the snake, I am in the deer, I'm in everything and everyone. And if you knew that, you would never be afraid of anything or anyone. And that's a lifetime meditation. And that's the panacea. There's no fear when you know that Baba is in everything. And He's working, I believe He's working on that level with all of humanity, to remove fear, to know that He is in everyone. That sense of unity and that sense of love removes fear. And in some way, He's working on that. We may not be aware of it, but I think He's helping all of us in this direction. So then Baba said, I'm very happy. You will obey me without hesitation. And he turns to my father. Isn't that right, Darwin? They will obey me without hesitation. And he said it about 3 times, and we're wondering, why is he repeating? And later we figured out when Baba repeats something over and over, he's making it a fact so that you can obey him. And so we were very fortunate. Another time, still in 1952. And then each time after our interview in the lagoon cabin was over, Baba stood and embraced each one of us. This wonderful heaven. And your heart just goes, I love you, I love you. You know you love him. He's just pouring it on you, and it seems like it's never enough. And I don't have a capacity enough to receive more. And so as much as he gives you, you still are wanting more. We're always that way. But at this point in time, he held my face so that I could look directly into his eye. And I knew, just in that very split second, so much went passing by me that I must not pass up this opportunity and not be frightened to look into Baba's eye. And I knew that in order to look into his eye, I had to let go of everything I knew. Every form of security, every form of convention, every form of identity of who I am, everything that exists in my world, I had to let it go in order to go into Baba. And he was holding me in this embrace, making it possible for me to do that. So I dared. I don't know how many lifetimes it takes when that moment comes to take it and dare. There's more to that story, because we all have the opportunity to dare to enter Baba's being. He invites us to enter his being. That's what he came for, to invite us into his being. And so I took the dare, and I looked, and they were no longer that brown eye. I just kept going and going and going, and there was no end to seeing him. And what I really saw was light. It had no boundaries. It had no end. It was beauty, and I was in it, and it was the grandest thing in the world. It was beyond time, beyond any kind of description. It was the pure essence of being. And that's where we are. That's who we are. And there's nothing boring about it. I mean, you think how plain light is? No. It is the most beautiful thing. It's beyond beauty. It is, we kind of think, oh, excitement is what we're after. It's beyond excitement. It's so real. It's so very real. It is Baba. It is who Baba is. And it's who we are. And if we see that and be a part of it, it took me a long time to realize it's in me. There's no escaping it. It's in all of us. And that's part of our inner relationship with Baba, is to seek that light, the light of his love. In fact, when Baba came to the United States in 1952, it was on the heels of having completed the New Life. And during the New Life, there were many messages and sayings that came out from time to time. And one of them that struck me was that he was asking his followers to, now I don't know if I can get it right, I have to paraphrase it, to cultivate the love of the light, the love of the light of love. Cultivate that, the love of the light of love. Cultivate it. And he brought all of the new life, whatever that means, and that to us. And he showed me his light. But that's for everyone to see and be a part of that light, to live in it. Also, in other days past, and we had other interviews, and my sister and I were just so overjoyed with love, we could not stop smiling. We had a perpetual smile on our face every day. And it's just, it was like, a whole new world opens up. Life can never, ever be the same. In fact, anything and everything pales compared to Baba in your life. And to me, it's the beginning of a conscious relationship within. After all, when I reflected on when I meet Baba, what is really happening? When you feel him, you don't feel him out here. How can you feel him out here? Where do you feel him? This is the only place you can feel him and be conscious of him, and that's within. So our relationship is within. And there's no barrier to that. Form provides no barrier. And whether he's in form or not in form, there's no barrier to that relationship that's within. And that's what he wants us to cultivate. So here we went around smiling, and other people were having their interviews with Baba. And Renee and I would sit there in the evenings when my parents and we went to the Lafayette Hotel and watched them greet others, new people who were coming to have their appointments. And Renee and I said, bet you can tell who met Baba and who hasn't. And how do you tell? Wow, it's easy. Their eyes were sparkling like diamonds. It's just the transformation, it's just like that. Everybody's eyes were just sparkling. All the stuff was gone, and the real light was just shining through them. And for us, it made us so happy. And to this day, it makes me so happy to see Baba's light and love in people's eyes. And it's just so much joy to share that with people. And it's so important. Another thing that happened in 1952 was the big darshan program at the barn. That was very important, where the public was invited to meet Baba. And it's the first time that I know of in the United States, set a precedent. And Baba said that 1,000 years from now, people would be singing about this day. And people received his embrace. And every time anybody received his embrace, it was like we were being embraced. And my mother had the opportunity of being asked to be at the back of the barn. Maybe you were too, and Phyllis. And so Renee and I were permitted to be there, or at least we weren't chased away. And any time we could be near Baba or see him, even though we weren't invited into his presence, just to get a whiff, to get a glimpse of him, we were so eager, we were thirsting for him. And then the people would come in the door into the center of the barn and be embraced or handshake or whatever, and they'd get this sweetness of Baba's presence and then come out. They were staggering. They were so overwhelmed. They didn't have 5 minutes with Baba. They only had a very quick meeting, and they came out. They were just so overwhelmed with Baba's love. And Renee said they had to be guided down the stairs. They'd go into the lake, and they were just so oblivious of what was happening. And so this is how Baba affected so many people deeply. And someone said, how come you don't spend more time with them? And he said, so that I can touch them at the heart level before the mind gets going. And the same thing happened in New York City in 1952 when Baba was giving interviews in Mrs. Deuce's apartment after his accident. I was stationed upstairs, but all the Shaw family was asked to be on the premises during the 3 days, and we each were given duties. And my sister and father were saying that people would literally walk into the wall, that they were so dazed, and this is how Baba's love struck people so. One time Baba called my brother and sister and my mother into the room, and he gave her a bowl of grapes and said that we were to go out in front of all the people who were waiting for their interview, and she was to sit there and give us grapes. And we always kind of wondered what that was all about, although for us it was prasad. And later I thought, well, maybe this was another symbolic thing because she was the mother and she was giving the children. Of course, we were young adults. in our 20s then, or teens. It was later on I saw the parallel that she and my father were feeding all the Baba young adults and all the Baba people that came. They were feeding them Baba's love. He was setting this in motion that they would be feeding Baba's love to people. And of course that's how they lived their lives. Another time, my position was upstairs in a room to answer the phone, and every time it rang, someone else answered it, so I was there for another reason. And see, having met Baba and having committed myself so wholeheartedly and completely to obeying Baba by saying I would obey him, then it behooved me to do something with myself that I could and would, and I could correct myself, my own inner terrain, psychological, spiritual being, to the point of, so that I could increase my relationship with Baba. And I found that it was a whole day's work. I had never done spiritual work inside myself. And it was, as someone, who was at church, was a blood, sweat, and tears in a sense for me. It's a struggle to dismantle. Oh, I don't want to be like this anymore. Out. I'm behaving in this way, and that's not good for me. And I'm thinking these thoughts all the time. And that's not really what Baba wants. And so little by little, I was dismantling all the things about myself that I didn't like. And maybe Baba's holding up a nice big mirror, like, you could do better. And so I seriously set about rearranging myself so that I could function from a premise that was more honestly serving Baba and my relationship with Baba, to cultivate that love, to never let it go, to obey him, to be able to obey him. And that means not being that independent self in your own being, of not following along with the ways of the world, the ideas of the world, of how you should respond to situations. And many of them are in a dishonest way. To just follow what's true, and to be true to what Baba says, and to live your life that way. These were the things I was setting about, programming myself to be able to function in this way. And it's not enough just to set it in that pattern, then you have to follow through. And this was my inner work with Baba and my relationship with Baba that started in this way. So after the day was over, Baba called everyone together in the main room where people had been waiting, and all the workers were gathered with Baba. Oh no, that was another time. During that time where he called us all together, he was talking with people, and I was thinking, I should be loving Baba. And I thought, I'm adoring him. And he's talking along innocently, and as soon as I had that thought, he says, I'm adorable. He responds to everything. But then another day, the day after I did all that work within, Baba called us all into the room, the small room where he gave interviews, and we all crowded together and sat on the floor. And Baba was telling the story of King Janak. And while he's doing that, he's giving hand signals to different ones, unbeknownst to others. And so he did one to me too. He just looks up while he's telling this story, and innocently again he goes like that to me. And with that he flashed, oh, he's saying, I'm the one, Baba's the one who's doing all the work. You weren't doing it. Baba was leading you around and working all that, take this out and put this in. It was Baba doing the whole thing. So I learned that lesson, that Baba's really the doer. He's doing, you may think you're doing the hard work, but is Baba really guiding? That was my real taste of how Baba is guiding within, and learning to hear that Baba's guiding within. And as my sister put it, he set that up as a means of orchestrating our life. come. And indeed He did. I found that all the times I was with Baba, it was pure heaven, pure happiness and bliss. And other people didn't have that experience. But all the times I wasn't with Baba, it was hard. It was hard work. And I worked ever so hard inwardly to overcome all odds, to be with Baba, not to let go. And I was working and trying to make a living, and life was difficult. And again, life was difficult because of my eye situation. And I finally had to take a job as a messenger and walk within buildings in the company, General Electric company, delivering telegrams 14, 16 miles a day so that I wouldn't have to use my eyes too much. And the head doctor of the company called me in one day and said, you know, we can do something about your eyes. Why don't you have surgery? And there's a man here who wants to pay for it, and would you consider that? And I thought, I answered, I will consider that, and I knew that Baba was coming in 1956, and in a week or two. And I said, after my vacation, I'll let you know my answer. So I wanted to take that up with Baba. So then we met Baba in 1956 again, and of course this was in New York when Baba came. He landed in the airport, and our family went over way around the outside fence so that we could see Baba when he came off. And some of the movies of 1956 showed that. And we're the people he's waving at. And then we all rushed into the main lobby there where Baba came out of customs. And there was a whole group of Baba people and new people. No, this was still in the airport. And Baba came out and he embraced every single person and all the new people. Baba was always embracing us and embracing others. And so, and then he got into the car, and you see those pictures in the movie where the hood of the car is going up and down, the convertible top, and he's waving so sweetly. And we happened to be riding in a taxi, and we ride along like this and wave to Baba, and we ride and then wave again, and we thought, well, that enough, don't bother him anymore. So we happened to get to the Hotel Del Monaco before Baba, and we were able to get out on the sidewalk and wave. We never lost an opportunity to just see him and look at him and wave at him. And he responded. He always responded. He always gave you those love glances. And so appointments were set up again in the Del Monaco Hotel. Actually, our family stayed in another hotel, but we all came there to spend the days. And so we watched other people get embraced, and when the door would open, we would go, Baba again. And Baba gave his sadra to my mother to launder, and she did that overnight, and she was so happy. And my father said, let me carry that for you on the way back. And he comments, have you ever felt you've been embraced by Baba's sadra? It did feel like that, all of that. There were times when Baba gathered us together in a big room and he played with us. He had large bowls of fruit, and he would look at you and toss it to you, and we would have to be quick. And there were, I don't know how many, maybe 100 people in that room. We were all crowded in there. How big would a bowl of fruit need to be to toss fruit to every single person? And I don't remember a huge bowl of fruit, and yet everybody got a piece of fruit. And I still have the pits of the peaches. And I still have the gardenias that Mama gave us. These little mementos of his sweet love. And then Baba had different groups come up to his room. And after the Schenectady group left, he held our family back. And he came right up to me and he said, just out of the blue, he said, in Myrtle Beach, I'll tell you what to do about your eyes. I never asked. he knew about the whole setup. And so then I was satisfied and happy. And I was 22 years old by this time, so it's a long wait. But then he gathered the 5 Shaws together. He sat in a chair, and he gathered us around him on the floor. And this was over the lunch hour. And he started just pouring his love on us. We 5 became all attuned to him as one unit. We felt the oneness. I felt oneness with all of my family, and that we were loving Baba as a unit and as separate individuals. He wanted to give us that taste of oneness. And he didn't just give us an embrace, or it wasn't a quick thing. He just kept on pouring it on us. And it seemed like it was endless. He just kept pouring. It's like, I'm going to give you this once and live in faith. And he just on and on. And what was happening, I found that he was filling us so deeply and so full that I found that love is not just receiving, it's giving. It's a return. And you can't be afraid to love. You can't be afraid to give. Once we receive love, we want to hold on to it and savor it. And he showed by my doing it, that from the deepest depths of my feelings and from my heart, I could give it all back to him. In the deepest kind of surrender, I could give everything back to him and not be afraid of losing it. Because as soon as I gave it, he'd fill it up some more, and it seemed deeper and deeper and more full. And what we were doing was emptying ourselves of self without even knowing we were doing that. That's what love is all about. And it's automatic. His love brings about automatically this annihilation of self, this shedding of your being. And there's no need to clutch it and say, oh, you can't get that. It in the fullness of his love, and that's why he wants us to know his embrace is always with us, so that we know we are loved wholly and completely, and we can always feel that love. And this went on for some time.
It's beautifully read.
And we felt his light. We were enveloped in his light. And then Baba said, worldly people are satisfied when they eat food and their appetites are satisfied, but this is my food. This is my food. And this was over lunchtime. It was a love feast. And he said many other nice things, very nice things about our family. And he even said my brother was to go into the armed services for the Korean War. That was when he told him he must do this. And he asked my mother, he said, Jean, are you going to worry? And he said, don't worry. And when he said don't worry, she couldn't worry. Yeah. So he told us many things, and after this time, he gave us a chocolate piece of candy for our lunch and prasad. But his love is his grace. And he brought about this inner surrender through love, and we were not even aware of it. And this reminds me of this quote. He says, only my grace can bestow the gift of divine love. To receive my grace, you must obey me wholeheartedly with a firm foundation of unshakable faith in me. That's what our inner relationship brings about, that faith. And he shows us, he demonstrates us that it can happen. And you can only obey me spontaneously as I want when you completely surrender yourselves to me, so that my wish becomes your law and my love sustains your being. Age after age, many aspire for such a surrender, but only very few really attempt to surrender themselves to me completely as I want. He who succeeds ultimately not only finds me, but becomes me and realizes the goal of life. So Baba's not holding out on us. He's there to give us everything, right down the line. That's it, when you're willing. And there's another point on grace. And this point, it interests me because it shows me how in the smallest ways Baba is guiding us and telling us something. When I was telling my father the title of my talk, I said it was Baba's Embrace. And when he called to say goodbye, he had thought it was Baba's Grace. And so he said, you know, I came across this article on Baba's Grace, and he says, it's on page so-and-so. And so I wrote it down, and I thought, yeah, but I don't know if it'll fit into the talk and so on, so I wasn't quite sure if I would include it. Today, while Terry and I were going over some material, she pulls out this paper, and it's the same thing as I've got written down here. I said, Terry, Baba's telling me something. He wants me to read this. In the little things like that, he's knocking there and saying, pay attention. This is what I want you to read. So here it is. Baba said, there are many points which lead to this grace, which are wishing well for others at the cost of oneself, never backbiting, tolerance supreme, trying not to worry, which is almost impossible, but try anyway, thinking more of the good points in others and less of the bad points. When Christ said, love your neighbor, he did not mean fall in love with your neighbor. He did not mean fall in love with your neighbor. If you do one of the above perfectly, the rest must follow. I'll repeat that. If you do one of the above, the rest must follow. Then grace descends. Have love, and when you love, union with the beloved is certain. Wow, what a promise. When you love, you give. When you fall in love, you want. Love me in any way you like, but love me, it is all the same. And this is what Baba was saying all the time. Through all the years, he was saying to us, love me, love me, love me. And he said, it is up to you to draw from the ocean, and it's up to you to find out how. But he gave us answers. They may be a little bit hard, maybe tremendously hard, but that's something for us to work on. That's our homework, that's our inner work. We want to know. If we want to know the how-tos, he's given plenty of the how-tos of how to keep that love alive. So then, now to continue the story, in 1956, many of us followed Baba to Myrtle Beach, and many of us were privileged. Some, maybe 49 of us, were part of Baba's entourage in his trip from New York to Myrtle Beach to Los Angeles and San Francisco. And that was, another blessing, another opportunity to be with him. So to continue the story, we were in Myrtle Beach, and when we all got there, we had this opportunity to be with Baba. And so Baba, one of the first things he did was to show us to his house in Myrtle Beach. And he's showing us all around, everybody. And then people are going out the door, and he's a good host, and he's standing there seeing everybody out the door. And he stopped us. My father and I happened to be standing together, and he stopped us. There was no interpreter. And he said, to get our attention, tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock in the Lagoon Cabin, 9 o'clock in the Lagoon Cabin, the Shaw family come and see me, and I'll tell you about your eyes. So we get there, and so Dr. Neela was there, and Erich was there, Erich was interpreting. And we're sitting there together, and Baba says, so tell me about your eyes. And I thought, as if he didn't know. I knew he knew, but he wanted me to repeat the whole story about the doctor and the offer for the operation and so on. And so Baba says, And then he turns to Dr. Neela. What do you think, Dr. Neela? What do you think this is a good idea? What should she do? And he says, Dr. Neela says, yeah, that's a good idea. She should have the operation. So Baba turns to me and he said, yes, go ahead, have the surgery, and have it in October, and think of me for 5 minutes, and don't worry. And, here it is, finally. And so then, once again, that's not the end of the story. I'll skip over to our time in San Francisco on this tour. One afternoon while we were at the Holiday Lodge, my father and I happened to cross the courtyard and decide, let's have a cup of tea. And we went into the restaurant, and no sooner we sat down, and Baba was calling the Shaw family. So we rushed into Baba's room up there, second story, and all of the 5 of us were sitting there. And in a few minutes, we're being served tea with Baba. And so he's sipping his tea with us. And that's when he said, that's another story. But then after a time, he was about this distance from me, and he picks up an article. He picks this up. He touched it, of course, and he goes, and here I'm worrying if I can see it well enough to catch it, but it's not that far, and so sure enough he tossed it, and I caught it. And he said, keep that with you. And I knew that he meant I was to keep it with me during the surgery for my eyes. And so I did have the surgery in October, and I cabled Baba that I was going to have it in 1966, October. And Baba cabled back, and he said, be brave in my love. I wasn't scared. I wondered why he said that, but there's more to it than that. There's always more to it than that.
Leatrice, was that 66 or 56?
56, did I say 60?
Yeah.
Thank you, 56. And so the day came, I had, the day before the surgeon cut off all my eyelashes, and I said Baba's name before going in, and my mother prayed for me and so on. And when I got back, I felt so much of Baba's presence in this. It gave me the strength to get up out of bed before, they said I could. It's when you're suddenly blind, the physical light that comes in your eyes feeds you. If you don't have that, it's not good for you. And this took the place of it, the light from Baba. It gave me strength. Physical strength. And so then the way they did surgery in those days, I was living at home then. I was in bandages for 2 weeks, solid. And then 5 minutes a day I could open my eyes, and then 10 minutes a day, and then it went on for 5 weeks before I could have the bandages off completely. And it was somewhere along in there I knew that the surgery was a success. But the most interesting thing to me about the whole story is what happened next. My mother thought, we're going to have all these wonderful conversations and so on. I was home with her and so on. I was in seclusion. I was not here. I was not relating to the world. I was as if I were dead. My body was here, but I didn't see anything. I wasn't couldn't relate to anything in the outer world. I was never bored or lonely, and I didn't communicate with my family very much. What was I doing? I had been with Baba for all this time in '56, I had my own private movie film. And I was going over all the scenes with Baba. I spent all of that time with Baba. I was never tired of it. I was feasting in Baba's presence in this deep, deep inner communion. Day and night, I was with Baba all this time. And I was so happy. And of course I learned how to dress myself and walk and do things. And so on, learned the art of getting around when you're blind and all of that. But the real thing was that I was experiencing a really deep inner renunciation, far deeper than I could have imagined. It just happened. And this was the real surgery that happened to me. It was this, I had crossed a line, the point of no return. That's how it occurs to me. I could never backslide in any way in my relationship from that point on. I don't know where I'd gone. Baba doesn't put any labels on where you're at or take your pulse, but where I was at with Baba was in a very, very deep place. And it changed me. It brought about a deep inner transformation. And that was what it was all about, why I had to wait, not 52 to have it done. I had to wait till 56. This was part of Baba's testing, part of the faith and trust that he exacted out of me and made me exercise this complete faith and confidence. And come what may, whether the surgery was correct or not, whatever it was, that the real thing was Baba. And so then, of course, you can see the results. And on top of that, I have fusion, which is what I learned from the exercises. And in 1958, when Baba came to the United States, and we saw him again, and it was my turn to approach Baba in the lagoon cabin, he was like this, and he held me up like this, and he looked at my eyes just like a doctor would. He's looking from one to the other, and he said, beautiful. He was so happy about the work, everything that happened. It was just the perfect closure to the whole story, and how Baba can change you, and his answers are always there. And what's more, what I want to say is that his embrace is always with us. We are in this time frame of his manifestation now. We have waited thousands of years to take birth right now. Why did we do it? Because we want to be a part of his manifestation. We want to feel his love. We want to be a part of all this. There's not a future day. It's now. And what do we have to do? What is more important to us? If the door is wide open, there's no time to waste, but to be in his love. To make every effort, whatever it is. And this is why people are going through roller coasters and rough times, because God is making it possible. How can you receive his love if you're so full of yourself that you can't let go of yourself? What's more important? Real. And he's saying, come on, the door is open, come into my love embrace. And it's up to us to do it. It's here, it's now, it's not some future day. Baba is very, very active, clearing the playing field. He's cutting through the deposits of ancient sanskars. That's only he can do. And all we have to do is let him do it. He's holding us in his embrace while he does this. Come on, you will. Oh, there's something I want to read to you.
What is this object he gave to you?
Oh, I'm not going to pass it around.
But what is it?
It seems to be a little piece of redwood encased in it.
Plastic.
Encased in plastic. It seems to be a piece of redwood encased in plastic. Now, here's just a couple of things. This is from a book on Islam, and a Sufi saint wrote this. When thou regardest thyself as existent, and dost not regard me as the cause of thy existence, I veil my face, and thine own face appears to thee. Therefore consider what is displayed to thee, and what is hidden from thee. If a man regards himself as existing through God, that which is of God in him predominates over the phenomenal element and makes it pass away, so that he sees nothing but God. If, on the contrary, he regards himself as having independent existence, his unreal egoism is displayed to him, and the reality of God becomes hidden to him. Wow. And here's another little thing. Baba, your beauty is beyond the sunset. How can anyone know you except to love you? Your very being is grace. Your pure essence is. The intimacy of your love annihilates the self. Your song is in the heart. Its melodies rejoice in the sublime. Your song dances through the flowers of life. Come dance with me and sing your song, so that I may be in your sweet embrace forevermore. So, it's 4:30. 5:30. 5:30. If you have questions, yes.
I was somewhat close to your mom. You hadn't spoken too much about her today, but I'd just like you to reflect a little bit on her and her connection to Baba. Because everyone knows about Darwin, but Jean also had a life with Baba.
She sure did. She had quite a life with Baba, and it was quite different. We each, all of us, had our independent life with Baba, which is a secret life, the inner life. And she loved Baba in her own way, and Baba loved her very, very much. And I can say that Baba kissed her 7 times on 7 different occasions. And all of that will be in my father's book. And before she passed away, we made sure we documented and checked out everything with her. We reviewed all of her stories with her and reviewed it. So that will all be in my father's book. But she had a very sweet relationship with Baba. Otherwise, we all did. She's the one who said she had this wish to see Baba sit under the tree, the big tree up at MeherBabaLibrary. And sure enough, he went straight for the tree and he sat under it and everybody followed, and then he stayed until they left so that she could see that he was sitting under the tree. And she became so intoxicated, she couldn't move. And lunch was being served up by the main house, and she missed lunch. And by the time she did get back up for lunch, there was only a crust of bread, and she said she was in such ecstasy and so intoxicated that tasted like it was manna from heaven. She had many wonderful experiences with Baba.
I like that.
And Baba said she reminded him of his aunt. They had a very special intimacy. Yeah, very beautiful.
Morton, I'm reading, she was a guest in a meeting at Live's apartment meeting. The Bible meetings were at his house for a while. And we just said, well, what was your experience, Jean? She says, I can put it in one word. And she said, joy.
Absolutely.
And then she went on to, for the whole meeting, talking about joy, what joy really is.
Yes.
And she was this glowing.
Yeah. Yeah, Baba is joy. He wants us to experience that. So why are we fooling around with any other kind of experience? The best is available. You know, she did experience Baba's joy, and when she was passing away, she saw Baba and she said, "You have no idea what love really is, and it is so beautiful, you have no idea what it is."
She was a very vibrant woman.
She was dynamic, very lively, very wonderful.
Actually, I like to say that your story with Baba and the way you express it is the most loving story I have heard. And I know when every time I listen to you, when you're talking about that moment of meeting Baba, it's just so real and natural. It's just you begin to kind of realize it as to what it was to meet Baba in his personified form. And of course, by this grace, you maintained your relationship with Baba by having that inner relationship with him inwardly. And as I was listening to your story, it was like you kept on maintaining that very beautifully. So I like to know if it was all different, for some of us who haven't met Baba in this form, if it was different than meeting him in person than meeting him like inwardly and having conversation with him.
It's a difficult question to answer. Because I have met him, so I can't say what the difference is, but I do feel that when you feel Baba within, you are meeting Baba, you are feeling him, you are experiencing him. And he came in his form so that we could all have an inner relationship with him without his form. And blessed are those who love him because they haven't seen him. It's even more valuable. You have that inner contact and you love him within. And he said, "I never leave you. I will never leave you." He hasn't gone off to some far off place. He is always with us. He said, "When I drop my body, I will live in the hearts of all who love me." It's the same. You can experience him the same feelings of love that I felt with him, because I know I have felt those experiences when I was not with him in the body. So it is the same. What more can I say? I don't know.
Your comment just now reminded me of the story I heard about Elizabeth Patterson, that after Baba died, her Christian minister came to visit her and give his condolences, because he knew how important Baba was to her. And he said, "I'm very sorry for your loss." And she said, "On the contrary, Baba is so much more available now."
Yes. Yes. And also he said it's up to us to maintain our inner contact. When the powerhouse is switched on, it's there, it's going to do its job, but it's up for us to keep that contact, the wires connected. He'll do the rest. And he is doing it. We can keep in that flow of love. I mean, we have times, we have dry times. We have times when we get taken off the path and we get into an ego state, or we get tested and we fall down. That's happened to me a lot of times. It's not all peaches and cream. It's hard work. And it always comes back to loving God. Letting all the rest go and loving Him. It's not that easy, but that's what we're here for. And the love is easy.
Can you mention what you talked about during the tea about when people are distant from one another? This
Oh, yes.
egos and
Yeah,
things you hadn't.
I heard Erich in Mandalay Hall, someone asked him a question, and the answer was, when you find yourself distant from another person, then you are in ego mode of separation. Is that how I said it before?
Ego separation.
Ego separation.
You told about a little incident that happened to you in India.
Oh,
Well, I mean, you didn't give details, but
Yeah.
it's the way you dealt with it, I think, is helpful.
well, I was in a it wasn't that year even. I was in the ego mode of separation because somebody had really, I think Baba wanted to, I don't get angry very easily. And somebody just really did it, pressed the right buttons, and wow, I exploded. It shocked everybody. It hurt me very loudly. And what? And I was in no mood to forgive. And I wasn't enjoying the injustice of the situation. And I was enjoying the ego separation. I wanted to savor the moment. and I knew better than to run with that energy. So Sherry came to my room and she said, you've got to, and my daughter gave me this lecture, which I had already just given to myself. And I said, I know I have to forgive, and I know I have to do it, and I know I have to, I don't want to. And she said, yeah, I know you don't want to, and I know you're perfectly justified in not doing it. And she said, you can't go around all the rest of your life over this, holding it against this person and ignoring this person, and the whole thing would just wash them out of proportion. I said, yeah, I know that's what's going to happen. And there was a lot of pressure. I felt like, oh gosh, the consequences of this is really horrendous. And that worked. And I knew I just had to let it go. I mean, here you are in India, why can't you let it go? And so Baba just wanted to show me that, what I had in me. And he also wanted to show me that I had it in me to forgive. Oh, he's done that many times. And so there was a new twist to it. And so, of course, then the next morning it all resolved and both parties gave forgiveness and received forgiveness and everything was fine and we were best of friends and all that. But we both help the rug out from under you now and then.